I want to dig into the 7 hidden habits that are destroying successful men. Misplaced identity, success at all costs, lack of boundaries, emotional suppression, isolation in leadership, neglecting the inner life, or having no scorecard at home or with your health. Of those 7, which one is the most destructive to you right now? Of those 7, which is the one that's keeping you up at night? Of those 7, which is the one that you find yourself reverting back to and being so overly frustrated? What if I told you that I had a way to help you identify that and some action steps out of it? What's up, everybody? Ryan James Miller. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Unlocking Greatness. So, you're killing it at work, but you feel distant at home. Maybe you are just completely zapped of energy and your health completely sucks, or you are stuck in surface level, or you're hunting for some sort of meaningful relationship in your life. Why is that? Today, in this episode, I want to dig into the 7 hidden habits that are destroying successful men. The problem is these are often silent struggles, and these aren't things that are as obvious or apparent as they should be. And I want to share with you exactly what you can do if you're struggling in any one of those 7 areas. So, let me ask you this question. What if you've been told your whole life that the way to achieve greater success, the way to overcome a problem, the way to overcome a challenge was just to hit it harder, was to put your head down, to blow through a wall, just to get after it more than you ever have before? What if that's what you've been told? I know that's what you've been told because that's what I've been told. And yet that was a lie. And instead, what if the problem was misalignment? So what I want to do is I want to break down a couple of these areas for you to help you understand or identify whether or not you're struggling in one of these areas. But before we get there, I just want to talk a little bit about why success in one area doesn't translate to success in every area. So I'm going to give you an example of something that I've struggled with. And if you've followed me for any period of time, you've probably heard me talk about this. I wrote about this in my book, Wounds, but this is something that I struggled with a lot in my career. And it was the fact that I came from very little. I grew up without a lot. I found success in sales fairly early in my life, in my mid-20s. And I started working really, really hard because I found success. And I was told, and in many ways it is true, the harder you work, the more productive effort, the more excellent effort that you put into your role, the better outputs, the better outcomes you're going to produce for yourself. And so I was working hard. I was staying after hours. I was showing up early. I was going the extra mile. There was just, I was putting in so much to my career. And as the result of that, I found success pretty early on in my life. I was winning awards. I was top salesperson in the organizations that I was working for. I mean, it was pretty dope. And as the result of that, I was making good money, more than 6 figures in my late 20s, back in the early 2000s, which was a lot of money at that time. I was doing that, at least on the surface, in order to provide for my family. We had a nice house, we had nice cars, we had cool stuff, and my wife was staying home with our first child at the time. And so I was trying to provide a great life for them. And so I kept at it, and I kept succeeding. But there was a couple of underlying issues. First of all, it wasn't all about my family. I was trying to build success for Ryan. I wanted the accolades. I wanted the rewards. I wanted to make money to have nice stuff. But there was a bigger challenge even than that, and it was my family didn't give a crap about that stuff. Now, granted, my wife liked our home. She liked the Mercedes that she drove. She enjoyed going on short trips. Definitely, she enjoyed that stuff. My daughter, She was really little, but I'm sure she enjoyed having food on the table and going places and doing things. But they didn't care about that nearly as much as they cared about their husband or dad being home. And that I wasn't very often, because I was too busy working, making a name for myself, achieving greater levels of success, building my career. Resonate with that? Have you ever found yourself, or maybe right now you're finding yourself in that same position where you are working so hard, you're putting in so much effort, you're trying to do everything you can, all in the name of building a better lifestyle for your family, so creating better or more security for your family. But have you ever really just sat down and asked your family whether or not they cared? How much they cared? Maybe your family would be willing to tell you that, or is wanting to tell you that they're willing to take a 25% pay cut. But are you? And again, this isn't just about the negative impact it can have on our personal lives. I was also a stress case a lot of the time, and I'm sure many of you feel that way too. And the reality of the matter is there's this huge gap between who we are right now and who God has called us to be. And we need to close that gap down with alignment. We need to make sure that all of our efforts are working towards the same end goal in mind. As Stephen Covey says, we have to begin with the end in mind. So we need to know what that end is in order to create that vision for the future. But we need to make sure that we're working towards, we're working concerted effort towards one goal, one finish line that is ultimately going to fulfill the roles that God has called us to. And by the end of this episode, I believe that you're going to be able to name the gap in your life, or at least where that gap is showing up, and start to understand what to do about it. Okay, so let's dig into these 7 hidden habits that I feel like could be just destroying you. They may not be showing up on a day in and day out basis, but I'll bet you're going to resonate with 1 or 2 of these, if not with all of them. So the first one is I see a lot of misplaced identity. You see, we confuse what we do with who we are. You find a lot of value. You find a lot of worth in that award, in that producer of the year, salesman of the decade, manager or VP title. And you start to feel like that's who you are. You have to maintain that level of effort and energy, because if not, God forbid you lose that title and people will start to think of you different. Misplaced identity. It's a dangerous, dangerous habit to continue to possess, to practice, to live into. Number 2, you may be practicing a very bad habit of success at all costs. You see, you may be struggling with being so focused and busy on winning that you forget what's worth winning in the first place. And as a matter of fact, you may be so busy and focused on winning that you're not recognizing all that you're losing. This shows up in a variety of different ways, but more than anything, this shows up in the professional workplace. So focused on getting after it. And again, for good measure. But it can become excess. And it can start to destroy your family. It can start to destroy your health. It just eats at you because it's a bad habit. The third one is a lack of boundaries. A lack of boundaries, practicing poor boundary management, is a terrible habit. You plan meetings, but maybe you don't intently focus on them. You don't make room for the important things in your life because you're too focused on the urgent things in your life. And by the way, when I said meetings earlier, what I mean by that is you're just checking things off the box. You're showing up at maybe even business meetings, but definitely in personal interactions, coffees, lunches, and you're always just thinking about the next thing. You know, I've brought this story up before, but I have a couple of friends, colleagues that I will sit down for coffee or lunch with them and they can't put their phone down. We'll be in the middle of a serious conversation and their phone goes off and they just pick it up. That is a terrible habit. Not only does that devalue the person that you're sitting across from, but it is removing the opportunity that you have to build a real relationship with a person that's actually in real life in front of you. The fourth bad habit that I see a lot of high-performing men practice is emotional suppression. This praise for being calm under pressure becomes a curse of bottled pain. You wave this flag, you carry this banner around that says that I can take it. I've got this. No matter the situation, I can deal with it. I can dial it in. And then you start to feel it and you cannot get away from it. The problem is you've created, back to number one, such an identity of overachievement that you don't even have the opportunity to share that with anybody else because you've bottled it up so deep down inside of yourself. The fifth habit that I see practiced that is destroying your ability to be holistically successful and healthy is isolation in leadership. You see, you, like I, probably do a really good job of carrying the weight for everyone else. You take on other people's burdens, which is a fantastic trait to be there, to support other people, to walk with other people through their struggles, through their hurts, through their heartaches, through their tragedies. You step in when people are in need. You close the gap when somebody else on the team isn't fulfilling their role. The problem is who's doing that for you? Who is there to support you? Who is there to help you out? Who is there to close your gap, to fill your gap? You see, you've built such an identity, again, back to number one, around this idea of being able to carry all of the weight that people don't even consider you need any help because they have just been led to believe that you never need it. It's destructive. It's absolutely dangerous to you and to me too. And I've been there. I am there. Number 6, you are practicing a bad habit of neglecting the inner life. You have completely disregarded your soul because you are so focused on the practical what's in front of you. And this happens in business all the time because it's so easy to identify metrics for success and failure. We stay uber focused on them and we build out strategy to grow from them. It's not even that we do it. I do it. This is one area that I struggle with so much. We swap out prayer for productivity, and we wonder why we are so empty. We wonder why we constantly find ourselves coming to the end of ourselves. It's because we are not seeking the Lord, because we are not filling ourselves, refilling ourselves with the power of the Holy Spirit in order to carry us into the next battle. We just disregard it oftentimes until it's too late, and then we're already just spun out, over anxious, stressed, frustrated with people in our life that have nothing to do with why we should be frustrated. We're just taking it out on everybody and everything. And finally, the 7th bad habit that I see that is doing a really good job of destroying successful men is there's no scoreboard at home or in your health. As driven men, if we don't have targets, we will never gain traction. And unfortunately, we ignore what we can't define. And I get it. It's difficult to define successful husband in the same way you can define successful entrepreneur. But there are metrics. This is part of our 5 pillars of greatness is we lay out metrics for 3 tiers of what it looks like to be great in the relational category, which includes being a husband, being a father. But if you don't have targets, If you can't define success, you will stop pursuing that because you're just not sure what to pursue. But I have good news for you. These struggles aren't signs of failure. They are signs that you are ready for a change, and change is awaiting you. Transformation is available to you if you are willing to put in the work, if you are willing to look at things a little bit differently, if you're willing to not over-prioritize work. You don't have to under-prioritize it, but if you're willing to stop over-prioritizing work and start prioritizing your health and your family. You need both of these desperately. And they need you. Your family needs you. Your health needs you to invest in it so you can be around for a long time, to continue to be successful in all of these different areas. And this is why so often we talk about this gap framework. This idea that we need to be living with God-aligned purpose. Everything. I opened up this episode talking about the fact that we're often out of alignment, right? It's not that we're not putting in the effort. As a matter of fact, we may even be putting in the effort at home. We may even be putting in the effort with our fitness. But maybe the effort we're putting in is out of alignment with who God has called us to. You still need to do those things, but maybe you need to be looking at them, approaching them, and executing on them differently than you are right now. But if you don't know what your God-aligned purpose is, you're going to have a hard time executing on anything that's in alignment. Back to the gap framework. God-aligned purpose begins ensuring that your life is grounded in faith. We need to recognize, again, identity. It starts with identity. We need to recognize that our identity doesn't come from a boardroom. It doesn't come from a professional scorecard. It doesn't come from a top sales trophy. Our identity comes from the one who made us. I am in Christ. That is my identity. I am a follower of Christ. And if you are a Christian, you too are a follower of Christ. This informs, this influences, this impacts every single thing that we do. This is why the 5 pillars are so relevant. This identity that we have in Christ impacts our faith, obviously, our relationships, our health, our finances, and our business efforts. But we have to live from and operate from that identity if we are ever going to live out the alignment that we're called to, which is the A. The A in the gap is authentic in action. And again, we've got to design our lives. We've got to set goals. We've got to design habit and discipline. We've got to create rules for life. If you're a John Mark Comer guy or a Jordan Peterson guy, we've got to create rules for life that are in alignment with our values. What ultimately informs our values? Our identity. And so we need to make sure that as we set out, again, back to the beginning of this episode and talking about this idea that there are all these habits that are destroying us. They're destroying the successful man, being that he's successful in business, but he's not successful in these other areas of life. Authentic in action requires us to live out our values, to create habit and discipline that give our utmost effort to each area that God calls us to, not just the one that is metrics driven, that is seemingly met. And finally, purposeful in pursuit. Do you know, this was going to be a statement, but I think asking this question is going to be most helpful for you. And then, by the way, I'm going to give you a way to reflect back on this and take some action right now. But before we get there, when it comes to being purposeful in pursuit, do you know what winning looks like in those 5 key areas of your life. Do you know what winning looks like with your faith? Do you know what winning looks like with your relationships? Do you know what winning looks like with your health? Do you know what winning looks like with your finances? And do you know what winning looks like in your business? Some of those are easier than others, but I want to tell you right now that everything you have learned from the world, even about what winning looks like in business and in finances, which are the 2 areas that are informed the most, and maybe even health, may not be relevant to you and I. I'm not saying they're all bad. But do you know what winning looks like in the places that matter most to you based upon what God has called you to? You see, we have to understand what's for us in order to serve others the best that we possibly can. If we want to be in peak physical condition, we need to know how to create rhythms, disciplines, habits, rules that are going to allow us to perform at the highest level in the gym without destroying our professional aspirations, our personal relationships, our money. Like if you want to get super jacked, you can't just go to the gym 8 hours a day. You'd be bankrupt. You'd have no friends except the bros in the gym. We can overdo it in any one of these areas if we listen to the wrong people. I was actually just in a conversation with one of my mastermind partners shortly before recording this. And one of the things that he said, he's been doing fitness coaching for a long time. He's transitioning into more of leadership development. That's actually what he's much, much better at. And that's what he's been coaching a lot of his fitness clients on anyway. But he says one of the most frustrating things that he sees is in the world of fitness coaching, all these bros are out there telling men that they need to spend all this time, have the super defined morning routine, that they need to get out there and get after it for hours a day and, take all these supplements, whatever. And my buddy said, wait until you get married and have a couple kids and then see what that morning routine looks like. You see, God would say that your priority is to your family over your fitness. And yet he's not calling you to neglect your fitness, so you're going to have to pivot. And you're going to have to follow people that are going to understand and be in alignment with your values, not with what the world says you should do. And that goes for every single one of those areas of life. We can quickly be misled if we are not careful. And so my question for reflection for you would be, of those 7 habits that I talked about, those destructive habits, let me recite them again. Misplaced identity, success at all costs, lack of boundaries, emotional suppression, isolation in leadership, neglecting the inner life, or having no scorecard at home or with your health. Of those 7, which one is the most destructive to you right now? Of those 7, which is the one that's keeping you up at night? Of those 7, which is the one that you find yourself reverting back to and being so overly frustrated? What if I told you that I had a way to help you identify that and some action steps out of it? Down in the description, down in the show notes, you're going to find our 5 pillars assessment. And what that does is provide a quick scorecard in the 5 key areas of life that I shared, the 5 pillars that I discussed. And it's going to identify which one you are challenged with the most. Maybe there's going to be a couple that are equal. We actually just got a submission today, and there were 2 that were equal. And so we sent out, just not to overwhelm, an action guide around how to grow in that one specific area. And so what I would encourage you to do is to consider those 7 areas. Which one is causing you the most pain? Which one is causing you the most frustration? Which one is holding you back? And then take action. And you can take action by taking our assessment. We'll send you an action guide. There's no obligation to any of that. That could be a good jump start for you. And you may be saying to yourself right now, like, you know what, I'm not 100% sure. Well, and by sure, I mean, you may not be 100% sure which of the 7 is most clear to you. What I would encourage you to do is take quick stock on your home life. Does your wife and do your kids commend you for consistently being present with them? Are you engaged at night? Are you able to participate in their sports activities, going and showing up at games, practices? Are you taking your wife on regular date nights? If you're not doing those things consistently, then I would ask your kids, hey, or your wife, hey, I know I haven't been as present as I should be. What do you think I'm struggling the most with? And see if they've got some feedback. You may be surprised by what your kids say, but I'll bet your wife's got some opinions. And wives, if you're listening to this, you can ask your husbands this if these are things you struggle with. The goal is to gain an understanding for where you're struggling, identify the bad habits, the things that you're responsible for that are controlling that destruction, because it's your fault. The good news, though, is you can do something about it, and then do something about it. Again, think about that gap. Are you grounded in faith, authentic in action, and purposeful in pursuit? If you're not sure where to start, take our 5 pillars assessment. It's a great way to help you out in that area. The whole goal of this episode was just to bring to light the 7 habits. It's not so much to teach you how to fix them. We've got to be aware before we can do anything about it. And I think that far too often, because we're successful in business, we become unaware of the other places that are the other areas of our life that we're destroying. And I want to help you reclaim success in those other 4 areas, with your faith, with your family, with your finances, and with your health. You deserve it. Your family deserves it. So I want to see you do something about it. We've got a whole lot more coming on topics like this, a whole lot we've shared before. Go check out last week's episode. That was a great one. That was kind of a leapfrog into some of this discussion and topic. If you've got feedback, thoughts, ideas, make sure to drop those in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can DM me on any one of the social platforms. I'd love to hear your feedback on this podcast episode, or maybe on some ideas for future episodes. I want to continue to do what I can to serve you in creating content, in creating free resources, guides, whatever it may be. I want to be there to support you. Because if you are ready to close the gap between where you are right now and who God has ultimately called you to be, it's your responsibility to take the next step. The question remains, will you take it? Peace.